Have you ever stumbled across a story online that hits you so hard it doesn't even feel like just some random post? Today I was scrolling through Reddit and found a few stories like that. Way too real, way too creepy to ignore. I've got a feeling you're going to want to hear these. So, no more waiting, let's dive right in.
Story 1.
This whole thing started around 3 weeks ago. My car had broken down for the second time in just as many months, and even though the mechanic told me that it would only take them a day, I was forced to ride the bus for the rest of the week. I'm sure, if you ever had to do something like that, you know just how fucking pissed I was. I had to get up an hour earlier every morning, yet I almost never made it on time anyway. Instead of picking up coffee along the way, I had to squeeze myself into what felt like a metal tube filled with strangers and their smells. If I left just on time, I somehow managed to arrive only half an hour later than I would have with my car. I was cursing out some deity or another every single time I boarded that bus. Between the rough driving, the noise and smells of other people, and the constant delays, I really thought I might either get fired or assaulted by the end of the week. Let's be honest here, it just doesn't work. Not having a car, I mean. At least around these parts of the country. Now, back to my problem. It all happened, as I said, about 3 weeks ago. On a Thursday, to be exact. I got out of work at just past 5 and sprinted through the city to get to the bus stop in time, already promising myself that I wouldn't have to do that anymore soon. By the end of the week, I would have my car again, I told myself. It would be smooth sailing from then on. Back to my old ways. Well, I managed to catch the bus, drenched in sweat and completely out of breath, and the only reason I did so was because someone blocked the road for a minute or two. Otherwise, it would have passed me by. I was so thankful at that moment, yet I cursed that person now. When I boarded the bus, breathing heavily, it wasn't nearly as full as it normally would be, which might have been a clue, I think. This time, I even got a seat, although not one of the good ones, since I had to sit with my back to the driver and was looking at all the other people taking the bus, just like me. So I took it and started staring out of the window. The first 10 minutes were completely normal. Well, as normal as riding the bus can be. I watched some people in business clothes boarding and sitting down. They looked exhausted, and I had to smile as I saw my own fatigue reflected in their faces. A few kids came to the next stop, with music blaring from their phones. I don't know if they don't realize how much they bother the rest, or if they're doing it on purpose. Then an old man with a cane boarded, and kept holding it almost like a weapon as soon as he saw the youths. You know, the normal circus, so to speak. But that all changed at the sixth stop. I know that because I replayed what happened next almost constantly in my mind. This guy boarded the bus, and I immediately felt that he was trouble. He entered from the door in the back, slowly lumbering in, with his head tucked so it wouldn't hit the top of the frame. His brown coat was dirty. He wore an ill-fitting hoodie underneath. His jeans looked washed out and scraped, and there were bandages on his right hand. I know it's not nice to say, but I immediately thought this guy would smell. And he did. Of tobacco, cheap booze, and rancid sweat. The odor was so strong that I stopped breathing through my nose as I watched this man, standing by the back door, slowly turning his head. He looked rough. Everything about him just seemed off, somehow. The hood he was wearing didn't cover his greasy hair, and those dark shades over his eyes made him look like a junkie. Some small voice in the back of my mind already screamed at me to get up and walk out, but the prospect of arriving home even later made me stay. I felt a kind of morbid fascination, I have to admit, watching this big, strange-looking guy standing there, swaying from side to side as the bus set off again. Well, all of that disappeared the moment his gaze fell upon me. He stopped turning, and looking around a second, he spotted me, and our eyes met. I could feel it, even if I didn't see them through the shades. It's hard to describe what I felt at that moment. Fear? Yeah, but worse. My throat went dry in an instant, and the stench seemed to invade my nose. I could feel my hands shaking and cold sweat breaking out all over my body, like a deer in headlights, or a mouse getting dropped right in front of a snake. This terror gripped me, and I immediately averted my eyes, even though every single part of my mind screeched at me that the damage was done already. The man had spotted me, and I could hear the big, lumbering steps echoing around the bus as he slowly started to walk in my direction. Why didn't I jump up then and run to the door by the bus driver? Would it even have made a difference? I could feel him coming closer and closer. The stench was getting bad enough that I could taste it on my tongue. This guy, he was heading for me, I knew, yet could do nothing but sit there and tremble. His heavy steps reached the seat in front of me, and the woman who had been sitting there stood up. I could smell his breath now, too, the sour stench of rotten food. He sat down across from me, just as the door opened, and I jumped up and ran. Finally, my body had moved, had reacted to the oncoming danger, and even though it was far away from my stop, I just couldn't bear it anymore. I slipped out of the bus the moment before the door closed, almost stumbled, then dared to look back, and what I saw there made my skin crawl. The man was standing by the window and staring out directly at me. I didn't want to wait at the stop for the next bus. Somehow, I could feel this insane uneasiness. It felt like something told me that the man would get off at the next stop and come back here. So I took an Uber home, paid the money gladly, and thought that with that, the whole episode would be over. But no, I still had to ride the bus the next day. Taking an Uber once might have been fine, but I wasn't about to pay a whole day's wage just to get to and back from work. The only thing I could think of was starting my commute even earlier than clocking out sooner. It's not like my boss would mind, I told myself, and boarded the bus the next morning a few minutes after 6 o'clock. At first, I felt relief when I got on and could see the bus being almost full of blue-collar workers, all minding their own business in silence. All would be well, I told myself. How foolish. My happiness lasted around half an hour before we got to the part of the city where I'd seen the guy. The bus rounded a corner, and suddenly, I felt this strange feeling again. Sweat was breaking out all over my body. I was hot and cold at the same time. My heart started racing and my lungs burned. Completely overwhelmed, I looked up and saw it. Him, standing at a street corner, a brown bag in his hand. He was wearing the exact same outfit from last time, and his eyes, still covered by the shades, found mine immediately. I don't know how he recognized me, but he most definitely did. The moment he noticed I was in here, he dropped the bag and started to run after the bus. His big steps carried his massive body forward as we sped past. A stop was soon coming up, I knew, and felt this fear and dread already gripping my heart again. What did he want? Why was he chasing me? Had I insulted him in some way? Provoked him? I don't know. I can't say. All I could do was press my face against the window to look at and watch the man racing after the bus that would soon stop to let people out. And the vehicle came to a squealing halt, and I wanted to scream. I had lost sight of the man, but I was sure he was still running toward me. Somehow I could feel it, his presence. The fear and terror that had gripped me told me to run and hide myself, but I knew that I wouldn't make it far out there. So I stayed in the bus, shaking and trembling like a child having a nightmare, as the sound of heavy steps coming down the road grew louder and louder. I wanted to scream at the driver to go. I wanted to duck and hide. The stench hit me suddenly, and I could have broken down on the spot. Tobacco, alcohol, sweat. It invaded the bus and almost made me retch. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him. The big, lumbering figure sprinted full speed down the sidewalk. The door was still open. I wanted to cry. He would get on the bus, I knew at that moment, and contemplated jumping off. Suddenly, I heard the doors falling shut and felt the engine starting up, just as two massive hands hit the side of the bus in frustration. The driver cursed but drove off, and as I looked behind, I could see the man standing there, out of breath, while his eyes still followed me. To say I was useless at work that day would be an overstatement. I was a nervous wreck the whole time, and my boss told me to leave early since I wasn't managing to do much anyway. Thankfully, I thought I needed to get on another bus that day, which would take me to the service center to finally get my car back. What I didn't expect was that as soon as I walked over to the bus stop, that smell suddenly hit me. I was standing in a crowd of people and couldn't move. The stench was here, so strong. Luckily, the bus came just a few seconds later, and I boarded it without a problem, but as soon as we drove off, right in the alley next to the stop, I saw him again. And he saw me. The fear gripped me, even though I knew he wouldn't be able to get to me that time. He started to run, but the bus drove off and deeper into the city. Shit, I should have noticed it back then. The fact that the bus stop I had been waiting at was so close to my work. This strange guy was slowly but steadily finding me. Maybe if I had just left then and there, I would have been able to get away from him. No, I don't think so. Something is wrong here, with him or me, whatever the case. I can't even begin to describe how elated I felt as I got in my car again. I would have taken any kind of trade-in as well. All I wanted was to be able to drive on my own once more, to leave public transportation behind. And with it, that man, well, I was wrong. Not even a day later, I stopped at a gas station, miles away from where I worked, opened the door, then froze. There was again, that stench, followed by the terror I always felt. A shadow seemed to fall upon me as I looked up and saw a figure standing by the side of the building, staring at me. He was grinning widely as he started to run. I threw my door shut and put my foot down, shooting out of the station and into traffic. Luckily, I didn't crash because as I looked into the rearview mirror, I could see the man running along the sidewalk again. I don't know what I did to him or how he manages to pop up wherever I go. Over the next few weeks, I saw him almost daily. Sometimes lingering around the street where my company is, other times waiting by the road. Twice I had to drive off as I had stopped at a red light when I suddenly saw him appear from one of the alleys. He's coming closer, I can feel it. Sometimes at night, I wake up with this dread in my chest. I've talked to the police, but they can't help or don't want to help since my description seems off. I even got myself a gun, but I don't know if it will be enough. I'm so fucking scared all the time. Right now, I'm staying in a hotel since last night. I saw the figure from my window walking around the streets out there. I think he knows where I am. He can find me anywhere, no matter where I run, no matter what I do. Even in my nightmares, he appears. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't rest. The gun is next to my laptop right now. There's this stench in the air coming from outside my room. Oh God, I think he found me.
Story 2.
The weather in the past few months here in British Columbia has been utterly terrible. Rain after rain after rain. Every single day. Last year at least had the decency of having the wintertime cloudy, rainy, and sunny. But now it is just pouring. Every single day. 24/7. To add to my already terrible luck, the only feasible way to get to work is to walk through this absurdly large park in the pouring rain. I mean, yes, I could drive, but the rush hour traffic would tack on 20 minutes to my commute compared to just walking. I tried biking a few times and almost got hit by a car on the road. I nearly kicked the bucket when I fell off my bike and rolled down a small hill in the park, almost hitting my head on a large tree. So biking is out of the question. Well, after today, I might consider taking the car or quitting my job altogether. It started an hour or so ago, around 5:15 p.m. I was walking through the park with my umbrella, my coat, and my backpack. It was pouring heavily. All you could hear were the drops hitting the leaves, the trees, the ground. Anything really. No one other than myself was stupid enough to walk through the park, so I was all by myself, which I usually consider nice, since I like to talk to myself and perhaps argue a little, especially about stupid things that I've done. Human brains work in mysterious ways. Today, I was arguing with myself about why people couldn't follow the simple instructions I made for labeling images for object detection model training. Was I too detailed? Not detailed enough? Were the other employees too technically illiterate to do this? I don't know. Beats me. It was what I was arguing with myself about at the time. That's when I heard sounds. Splashing sounds. Like footsteps in the distance behind me. They were loud too. Unusually loud. I turned around and saw nothing. Just the trees, the bushes, the grass, and the rain. I heard cars honking and people yelling in the distance too. So I remember just ignoring it and continuing my walk. Then I heard again. I turned around and was met with the same scenery of a park and pouring rain. I stood still for about 30 seconds. That moment spooked me out, especially since everything suddenly felt quiet. No sounds of traffic or people screaming, just rain drizzling onto the ground. I decided to continue walking at a much faster pace. The clock on my phone said 5:27 p.m., which meant I had another 18 minutes or so to walk until I passed through the park. For about 4 minutes, I heard nothing but the rain. Then I heard again, the sounds of splashes. This time, they sounded heavier, like an adult jumping into a puddle. I decided not to turn around this time. I just kept walking, thinking it was my paranoia kicking in, or perhaps the highly unlikely chance of my footsteps echoing behind me. Considering that the echoes might actually be possible, I decided to stop walking suddenly. To my surprise, the splashing sounds behind me did not. What's more horrifying was that the splashing appeared to be approaching me, and they did not match my walking pace. This meant that someone or something was really behind me, following me. I turned around, hoping to face whatever it was that was stalking me. To my relief or surprise, or both, I was met with nothing. Just the trees, the ferns, the bushes, and the rain. A false sense of relief washed over me. I took a deep breath, but paused for a moment when I realized that this person or thing could be hiding behind the trees or the bushes. Now I was panicking, scanning my surroundings again. I was met with nothing, accompanied by the absence of those unusual splashes. Like a sentinel, I stood there, watching for a good minute or so, and I found nothing unusual. Normally, this would be a good thing, but it did not calm me. In fact, it did quite the opposite. I was in full-blown panic mode. I decided to hightail out of there. I ran as fast as I could out of the park. That's when I heard the splashing sounds again, following me, but at a faster running pace than myself. I could hear the sounds closing the distance at an extremely fast pace. In my head, I was thinking that there was no way I could outrun this person or thing. Screw it, I thought. I will just have to fight this thing. So, I grabbed the metal water bottle on the side of my backpack with my right hand and turned around. To my surprise, I was met with nothing. But then, I noticed that there were no raindrops hitting my head. It was clearly pouring still. I looked up and saw the water splashing against something maybe 2 feet above me, like rain on a glass windshield. The water appeared to flow above me and finally fall behind me, hitting my umbrella and backpack. I could see the same thing to my right side without moving my head. Water was meeting an invisible glass pipe or something. I could see water splashing on this invisible thing, then flowing downwards before finally dripping off it. I turned my gaze to the left without turning my head, and my heart nearly stopped. The rain was flowing around something there too, but this time it was different. The water cascaded down in a way that suggested a shape, an outline of something right out of a nightmare. It looked like the rain was outlining a claw, with 5 sharp, knife-like appendages. The water flowed from the tips of these invisible knives, dripping off in a steady stream. I felt the absolute alarming urge to not look behind me. Whatever this thing was, it was right here, right in front of me, and I was at its mercy. My breath came in shallow gasps as I tried to think of a way out. Then it came to me. It seemed like it never followed me when I was gazing in its general direction. Maybe I could walk backwards and hope for the best. And maybe, just maybe, get out of this alive. I slowly walked backwards, step by step, foot by foot, while straining my eyes towards this invisible monster. Each step was cautious and slow. If I came across an obstacle, I dare not look down. I felt like I was roughly 6 feet away from it before I was able to kind of make out its shape. As the rain splashed on it and the water flowed around it, I could see it was a rather thin, tall thing. It did not seem muscular, though. From the curves that I could make out through straining my eyes, it seemed very smooth. Too smooth. Nothing that told me it was remotely humanoid. The difficulty of trying to understand this monster in front of me was that it seemed perfectly invisible, if not for the water outlining it. Suddenly, I could see its head, or where I thought its head should be, turned towards me. I gasped and lost my balance, falling onto the ground. I quickly raised my head and turned towards its general direction, my heart pounding in my chest. The rain seemed to avoid me entirely, as if I were under an invisible shield. No water was touching any part of my body, except my nose. I could see water flowing from the top of this invisible thing, cascading down its form like a waterfall. The droplets traced the outline of its knife-like appendage, revealing its terrifying shape. The water dripped off the tips of these invisible knives, landing on top of my nose. This thing was right on top of me. The appendage hovered just an inch above my nose, close enough for me to feel the cold air emanating from it. I dare not move. The rain continued to pour, masking the sound of my short, panicked breaths. The invisible monster was positioned above me with its claw ready to strike. Yet somehow my stare prevented it from doing so. Carefully, I crawled backwards while maintaining my gaze on it. Feeling somewhat comfortably far enough from it, I risked standing up. This time, I did not fall. I assessed my surroundings without moving my eyes and saw it was getting dark. I took the phone out of my pocket and held it right in front of me. Turning it on, I could see the clock in my peripheral vision. 6:07 p.m. Further adding to my panic, this meant that I had roughly 40 minutes before the sun set. It seemed that I had half a mile or so left to go in any direction before leaving this godforsaken park. Somehow I made it. I walked backwards slowly for what felt like an eternity, keeping that thing in my sight, no matter how strained my eyes were. Thinking about that trek now, I remember noticing that I did not see anyone else in the park. As I got closer to the exit, I did not hear any of the usual traffic. It was only when I left the park that I finally heard the familiar sounds of cars and traffic. However, this thing made my life hell. When it was out of sight, presumably because I walked far enough where there were too many trees hiding it, I would hear the splashes again. This made me panic as I would wildly look around until the splash sounds finally stopped. This happened so many times I lost count. At one point, it stood between me and the direction of my home. I almost gave up there, probably from fatigue, but I decided to just walk around it slowly. When my feet finally touched the pavement of the sidewalk, I knew I was finally out of the park. Suddenly, the clouds dissipated within seconds, and the rain with it. There were tens of people near me, going about their day, walking their dogs. I was extremely relieved. I inspected the park at a distance, trying to catch a glimpse of this thing. I thought I did, but I got interrupted by a nice old lady. She inquired if I was okay. Oh boy, was I a mess. My pants and shirt were ripped and muddy, my umbrella was bent upside down, and my backpack was open with all its contents spilled out in the park some tens of minutes ago. I told her I was fine, that I fell down a big hill in the park. When I looked back at the park, the thing I thought I saw was not there anymore. I quickly sprinted to my apartment. Now, I'm here on my computer at 8:13 p.m., typing everything down before I forget, but I probably never will. Beforehand, I looked up the park's history and missing persons. Apparently, there have been at least 2 persons missing a year in this city, last seen at this park. However, there was one news article dated back in the 90s claiming that a man, Arnold, once saw blue lightning flash above the park near the power lines. This was a week before he disappeared. Last week, I saw blue lightning flash on top of the park while I was working. Today, assuming that there's indeed a correlation, should have marked the day that I would have disappeared. However, the day is not over yet. I remember saying that I would either use the car or quit my job. Scratch that. I am moving out of the province. I think I will go back home to my family in Alberta. I can do that. I can work from home. Tell them that it's a family emergency or use my vacation days. Whatever. This should give me time to decide what to do next.
Story 3.
I sometimes think about a photo I saw when I was a kid, a photo that used to terrify me. I can't quite remember what was in it anymore, but the fear it stirred in me was so real, so sharp, that even now, years later, a flicker of unease returns whenever I try to recall it. It's strange how something you can't even picture can still haunt you. One rainy afternoon, I visited my Uncle Ryan, who still lived alone at 42 in the same house he'd grown up in. The place had a quiet, museum-like stillness to it, full of untouched memories. I remembered hearing from our family about how his teenage girlfriend, Elise, had drowned during a summer trip when they were just 17. He never really dated anyone seriously after that. As we sat in his living room, sipping tea under the soft hum of a table lamp, I caught sight of an old photo album on the shelf. A chill passed through me, sudden and inexplicable. Something about the album tugged at a deep, buried fear, like the feeling I got when I try to remember that photo from my childhood. It's not my uncle's girlfriend that was in the creepy photo, wasn't he it? I mean, his girlfriend looked sweet and charming. As we finished our tea, Uncle stood up and carefully cut a tiny slice of a lemon cake we were eating. He placed it gently on a small floral plate, then opened the fridge and set it on the top shelf, right beside an old glass jar with dried roses inside. I watched, puzzled. Saving some for later? I asked lightly. Uncle smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. It's for Elise, he said softly. She always loved lemon cake. I like to leave her a little something, just in case she visits. His voice held no irony, just quiet conviction. I felt a strange tightness in my chest, and that old, forgotten fear stirred again like something just out of sight was beginning to step closer. I stood and stretched. Mind if I look around? I haven't seen the house for years, I said, forcing a casual tone. Uncle nodded, gesturing vaguely down the hallway. Of course. Go ahead. I stepped into one of the newly painted rooms, a quiet, softly lit space with pale green walls and a fresh scent from the polished floorboards. I wandered toward the window. As I looked out, my breath caught in my throat. Someone quickly showed up in front of me from outside the window. Its head tilted slightly, and it was smiling. But there was something wrong with the smile. It was too wide, too fixed, like it didn't belong to a living person. I blinked, and in that split second, the figure was gone. I backed away from the window quickly, heart thudding. What makes it more disturbing was the fact that I'm in the second floor. I hurried back to the living room, trying to keep my voice steady. Uncle, I just remembered I've got to head out. I totally lost track of time. Uncle looked up from his chair, surprised and a little hurt. Already? You just got here. Stay for dinner, at least. I was going to make Elise's favorite stew. That name again. My skin prickled. Next time, I promise, I said, grabbing my bag and slipping on my coat with shaky hands. A week passed, and the image of the smiling figure refused to leave my mind. Sleep came in fits, my dreams flickering with half-formed faces and waterlogged whispers. Eventually, I gave in to the pull of the past and called my mom one quiet evening. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Do you remember that old maroon suitcase? The one that had Uncle Ryan's photos and sketches? There was a pause on the other end. That thing? It's in the attic, I think. Why? I just want to look at something. My mom sighed, a soft rustle of worry in her voice. That suitcase contains lots of valuable stuffs of your uncle. Just handle it with care. I promised her I'll be careful with it. It was time to face whatever had been waiting in the dark corners of my memory. The attic smelled of dust and old wood, thick with the weight of forgotten years. I found a maroon suitcase tucked behind a stack of broken displays, dusty chest, and yellowed, ripped magazines. My hands trembled slightly as I unlatched it, the metal clicks echoing in the stillness. Inside, the familiar scent of paper and charcoal greeted me. I sifted through them slowly, cautiously, until my fingers paused on a worn piece of cardstock tucked between 2 pages of sketchpad. There it was, the photo. At first glance, it looked innocent, an old black and white snapshot of my uncle's backyard, taken from a window. But as I adjusted my eyes, I saw it. In the far corner of the image, half concealed in the shadows near the fence, was the same smiling woman I saw from the guest room window. Elise. The grotesque, rotting, drowned face of Elise. My breath caught, but I didn't look away. I turned the page in the sketchbook next to it, and my heart thudded loud in my chest. It was one of Uncle's drawings, rough, frantic lines in heavy pencil. A woman with a drowned, sunken face. But what made me gasp was her neck, its long and impossibly stretched, reaching up along the side of the house, her face peeking through the second-story window, looking like a pale snake dipped in black mud. I suddenly understood. The fear I carried since childhood wasn't just from the photo. It was from seeing that face once before through the very same window when I was just a little girl. Elise had been watching over us.
Story 4.
As a devout Catholic, I had waited all my life for the rapture. When it finally came, I realized the falsehood of my God. It was 4 days ago now, though my perception of time has had a tendency to warp and distort lately, so it might have been longer ago. I sit here now, blinds closed and wooden boards nailed across the windows haphazardly. The only thing I have to accompany my thoughts now is this laptop and the static playing on my television 24/7. The internet doesn't work, but that is no surprise. It is the end of the world, after all. It happened on a Sunday of all days. God's rest day, the Sabbath, come to be bastardized by none other than the man himself. At least, that's what I think. I guess there is no way of telling if this truly is the work of God, but it's sure isn't the work of the God I worshipped. As any respectable man, I had spent my Sunday inside the comfort of my own home. I had some leftovers from last night's dinner, which I shared with my Swiss shepherd Lily. As I did the dishes, she opened the back door by herself and played in the yard, jolly as can be. We were happy. We were safe, until the angelic songs of heaven thundered across the sky. The song was beautiful, even if it was the most simple sound possible. One low, rumbling note from inhumanly beautiful male vocal cords. The sky peeled back, like a fresh cut from a scalpel, revealing precious golden light from up above. Not the soft, warm light of an artist's depiction of heaven. This light was raw, searing and awe-inspiring all at once. It beamed out in all directions, outshining the summer sun and tearing back further. The fabric of the world came undone at the seams right before my eyes. The lone note droned on, beautifully deep, reverberating through my very bones. My hands trembled as I set the last dish down. After all this time and devotion, I was afraid. I feared what was to come. Lily barked, and I turned toward the back door. Through the narrow window above the sink, I saw it. My breath caught in my throat as I saw creatures of divine golden light fly down from the tear in the sky. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, unlike anything I had ever even imagined. And one was coming for me. Lily barked at the things, and her ears pinned back as if glued to her head. Without thinking, I stumbled toward the back door and flung it open, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside now, I yelled at Lily, my voice lost beneath the omnipresent hum of the celestial choir. Even so, dogs' ears are far better than humans. So Lily jumped inside without a second thought, tail tucked tight between her hind legs. I dared not look at the thing now descending into my garden. So I slammed the door shut and locked it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Seeing outside my front windows was impossible. You know how in the summer, the street reflects the sun's light when it gets really bright? It was like that, only amplified 1,000-fold. Everything was bathed in God's radiance. To save myself from getting a migraine, I shut the blinds and closed the curtains, Lily whimpering in fright all the while. The house, and everything else for that matter, was vibrating with an intense roar, and I felt it might rise to the sky at any moment. I didn't tee, but others did. At first, it was a feeling. It was like small pieces of my soul were being ripped free. The neighbors, the dog across the street, all of them were leaving, tearing free of this world slowly. They were being plucked from the streets, from their yards. I heard someone on the sidewalk start to pray, praising Jesus and the Lord. I don't know what was more terrifying, her screams of anguish or the silence that followed. Well, silence discounting the choir. I do not know if I am right to fear the coming of God. The devout Catholic in me wants to burst through the front door and embrace the creatures I know in my heart are angels. The other part of me, the human part, can't forget that scream. Maybe she was a sinner and had been sent to hell. Maybe not. I do not know, and that haunts my head day and night. Another thing that makes me think that the human part of me may have been right is the humming. It hasn't let up since the sky split open, but didn't the Bible say the worthy would ascend and the rest would be left? If so, why have people been ascending for the past 4 days? Everyone who goes outside does. I feel it leaving their presence or their soul, I don't know what it is. Either way, on the first day of the rapture, half of my street had ascended. I had been left behind. I have never been what you would call a crying man. Hell, I didn't even cry at my own mother's funeral. I couldn't. It wasn't that I hadn't wanted to. It was that my body seemingly didn't want to. Maybe that was because of my upbringing. Maybe it's just me. The fact of the matter is that on that blazing Sunday afternoon, I cried. Cried isn't the right word. I wept uncontrollably for hours, late into the night. Lily licked the tears and snot off my face, probably trying to comfort me. I appreciated the sentiment, but a face full of saliva wasn't helping. She stayed by my side through all of it. Of course she did. She was the most loyal dog I could be ever wished for. I fell asleep with my head on her belly, the rhythmic up then down motion of her breathing soothing me to a restless, dreamless sleep. I awoke alone the next morning. The humming still vibrated the walls of my home, so there wasn't even the slightest doubt in my mind that last night's events had been real. I sighed, then closed my eyes. I whispered a quiet prayer to myself, then went to the kitchen. Lily sat calmly next to her empty bowls of food and water. I cursed myself for having forgotten, though I supposed I could cut myself some slack given the circumstances. Filling up her bowl of food, I let my thoughts drift to the choir outside. Had their pitch changed? Maybe I was just imagining it. Not for the first time, I considered going outside, then thought better of it. It was the end of the world, and here I stood, feeding my dog. Almighty God, please, I beg you, forgive me. I can't come. I can't, I whimpered, tears trickling down my cheeks and into Lily's now full bowl of water. She paused, then looked up at me, bits of her food still clinging to the fur around her snout. She nuzzled up to me, whining. The poor girl's tail was still tucked between her legs, and it hurt me more than anything physical ever could. That, more than anything, told me this wasn't my God. I trusted Lily, and Lily told me this wasn't right. I pet her, then told her to eat her food, and she obliged. Someone knocked on my door. 3 knocks. The faint sound of Lily eating stopped abruptly. So did the beating of my heart for a second as my breath caught in my throat. The deep drone outside carried on. My heart rate jumped so high it might as well have fallen into the hole in the sky. Damien, a voice inside my head called. I thought for a second that I had gone absolutely crazy. Off my rocker, as my mother would have said, or bats hit insane, as my eloquent father would have put it. Then I remembered the droning outside. The people I had felt leave this world. The end is here. Come now, your creator awaits, the soft feminine voice spoke. The words flowed through the crevices of my brain like wet cement, which solidified, and for as long as I live, those divine words will ring through ears that never heard them. I stammered out, unable to think coherently, unable to even comprehend what was happening. Hush, child. It is all right. Heaven calls for you and your companion. I couldn't think, couldn't speak, couldn't move. Might as well have been a goddamn plant. Lily cowered between my legs, ears nailed to her skull. Her unfinished bowl of food beckoned, but she didn't even glance at it. She was looking at the door, or rather, looking at the angel behind it. Time is of the essence, Damien. Open the door, she urged. Her voice was as calm and soothing as that of that AI girl in Blade Runner 2049. I had waited all my life for this moment. Why had I ever hesitated? I stepped closer to the door. Yes, Damien. Let us in. Let us into your heart. My pupils were dilated. I could feel them widening with every word. My fingers grazed the doorknob, and just as they did, Lily barked. The sound reverberated off the walls, disturbing the perfect harmony of the angel's voice and the tone outside. I have never heard such a beautiful sound in my life as that bark. My girl, my sweetest girl. Let us in, Damien. Her voice grew darker, and the lone note outside seemed to grow lower along with it. I looked back at my Lily, who was hiding underneath the kitchen table with fearful eyes. Then I stepped away from the door. What was that screaming yesterday? I asked. Silence. Complete and utter silence. It said more than any words ever could. I knew it for sure then. The people on my street had not entered heaven. They had not ascended to eternal paradise. Where they had gone, I had no idea, but it sure wasn't heaven. The rest of that day, at least I think it was a day, carried on without further incident. The angel didn't infiltrate my mind again, and there were no more knocks on my constantly vibrating door. I cried myself to sleep that night, as I have every night since the rapture began. What else is there to do? I slept no better that night than the first. Telling night from day was impossible, as neither my clock nor my watch worked. The outside was of no help either, as the divine golden light was constant and penetrated my blinds and curtains in a way that bathed my whole house in a warm, piss-yellow color. Delightful. I woke up to that light. No worse sight could have woken me. Everything was still real, a beautiful, Low hums still vibrated through my ears, though slightly dimmer. At first, that gave me hope, but when I realized I couldn't hear Lily's tip-taps on the wooden floor, I realized it was actually my hearing fading. It was, however, not too far gone to hear those awfully familiar knocks on my door. 3. Lily bolted between my legs, then sprinted towards the back of the house. Whimpering, she sat at the sliding glass door with fearful eyes. Damien. Though my hearing had faded, that word shot through my mind as crystal clear now as they had the day before. Of course, that had nothing to do with my hearing and everything to do with the fact that the words were being injected into my mind like medicine through a syringe. Go away, I shouted at the top of my lungs. Lily barked in a what that guy said kind of way, though she only pushed herself against the sliding glass door harder. Come, Damian. Your creator calls for you, she spoke. Her voice was lower than the day before, though it was still beyond beautiful. It lured me in, and I finally knew how fish felt when they were reeled up by fishermen at sea. Levi screamed that not my God. I said your creator, Damien, not your God. I had been ready for many responses. Denial, begging, but that was something else entirely. It took the breath from my lungs and the words off the tip of my tongue better than any punch ever could. I had prayed so often, wished for the rapture, wished for the Lord to take me into his halls. I had prayed for salvation so often, but I never thought to ask from who. It left me alone after that. I haven't heard it since, at least, so I assume it's gone. Apart from the ever fainter humming, everything has been quiet since then. Though, I admit, that is probably because I'm going deaf at record speed. I didn't hear Lily's food clang in her bowl like I usually do. I get scared when I see her, because I don't hear her coming. Dogs hear a lot better than we do, so this had to be even worse for her. Poor girl. If you'd asked me before all of this whether I'd rather be blind or deaf, I'd have answered deaf. Now I know better. If Heaven's choir hadn't ruined my hearing, I'd have heard the sliding glass door open this morning. I was awake. It would be easy to tell you I'd slept through it, or that I'd been upstairs when it happened. But no, if I'm going to die, I might as well do it as an honest man. Maybe that's because some part of me, the stupidest part, still believes my God is out there, and that he forgive me. I hope he does, because I cannot forgive myself. On what I think was Thursday morning, Lily opened the sliding glass door, just like I taught her to do when she needed to relieve herself, and ran out into the golden arms of light that took her to heaven. I have to tell myself that. I have to tell myself that they took her to heaven, even if I know the angel didn't I closed the door as soon as I saw it. It attempted to grab me, but it couldn't The sliding glass door that never should have been opened slammed shut right as it reached me. I'm looking at it now. I know it's looking at me too, waiting. It knows that get what it wants, and it's not hiding its intentions behind wafts of sunshine, rainbows, and bullshit anymore. I still pray, fool that I am, to the God I held in such high regard. But he doesn't answer. My creator does. He calls for me to satiate his hunger, to be absorbed into his greatness once more. What is there left to do but to join him and my dearest Lily? I'm sorry, girl. To whoever stumbles upon this, please pray for me. I don't deserve it. Those asking rarely do, but I didn't mean for Lily to die. I swear it. So please, pray for me, and may my God accept my worthless soul.
Story 5.
This is a cry for help. I've kept it bottled up for way too long. I can outright tell my friends or family without being committed or possibly imprisoned, especially after the investigation into Michael's disappearance got a lot of eyes on me specifically. I am sure the more astute of you could figure out who I am, but given the situation and the state of my mental health, that's a risk that I gladly accept because I need to say my piece. I start from the beginning. Michael and I were inseparable since we met in 5th grade. We bonded over a shared love of video games and fishing. We grew up together and stayed friends even after high school and choosing separate career paths. That is all fine and dandy, and I imagine that is something a lot of people could relate to. Nothing out of the ordinary ever truly happened, at least not that I can recall. However, everything took a shift after Michael returned to our hometown. He had been working on a dredge in South Carolina for a couple years. We stayed in touch for the entire duration, playing games online and calls every now and then, but this was out of the blue. Michael showed up on my doorstep at 5 in the morning with nothing. No bags, no phone, no anything except the clothes on his back. Something was off. All I could do was stare at him. I opened my mouth, but before I could say anything, he tilted his head to the side and made the expression of someone trying to convey confusion. Are you all right, Brian? Do you not recognize me? Or did you miss me so much you just in shock? What is going on here? Why are you gawking at me like that, man? I just wasn't expecting company this early, that's all I stammered. Something about that expression says it has something more serious than that. Are you sick, man? Is this a bad time? Rhetorical question, it is a bad time to be knocking on doors, but I am in a bit of a situation and I don't have anywhere to stay at the moment. Would you mind if I crashed on your couch for a bit? I'll try to explain a few things in the morning, or rather, the afternoon. Whenever I wake up, I blinked at him a few times. Sure, man, I'll get you a blanket and a pillow. I go to my living room closet where I keep spare blankets, pillows, and sheets. I turn around, and Michael is sitting on the couch with his back turned to me, looking out the window at the rising sun and the morning birds chirping and fluttering around the bird feeder on the porch. I hand the blanket and pillow to Michael. I nod to his response as he lays down and covers himself. I head back up to my room. I never known him to be involved in anything that would require a 200-mile trip with no personal belongings, and I've never known him to show up unannounced. An hour later, I went down to make a cup of black tea. I couldn't sleep once I was already woken up. Michael laid in his sleep on my couch. He was taking deep breaths. I thought I seen him stir and quietly rush past into the kitchen where I began setting up my Keurig. I heard a cough in the living room. Michael sat up, stretched, and seemed to notice the Keurig making its noises. He got up and slowly walked to the kitchen, rubbing the sleep out his eyes and combing back his semi-matted curly blonde hair with his fingers. That tea smells nice. I wouldn't know, I say as I glance up at him. You rewrite. You wouldn't Michael was never really a morning person, and he didn't get much sleep on the couch to begin with. He sat down bleary-eyed in the dining room chair across from me. I began to search for anything wrong with him. I clearly didn't hide my study of his face well enough, because he looked at me quizzically. Why are you looking at me like that, man? Do I got shit on my face? It was a rough trip up here. I wouldn't be surprised if there was I relaxed. He didn't look like he was on anything, and he didn't look like a man on a run. What caused him to bolt here with no belongings and without warning? It is nothing, man. Just checking if you alright. I looked down into my cup. Fair enough. You probably a bit confused on why I am here. Yeah, a little bit. That is pretty out of character for you, brother. He nodded and rubbed the stubble on his face. Well, I've been going through something. I am in way over my head, and I just needed to get out for a while. I stared at him. You not doing drugs or running with the mob, are you? What the fuck? No, I am not on drugs or running with the mob. Look, man, I can explain in its entirety. I just needed an out for a little while, and I needed it bad and fast. You the only person I felt comfortable enough to go to. I leaned back, exasperated. Brother, this is inconvenient. He put his head down slightly. I get it, man, I get it. It is really short notice. I know you don't like surprises or unexpected intrusions. I am sure me popping into the door this morning almost gave you a conniption fit, and I definitely should called ahead. Let me make it up to you. Let us go out to the black pond we used to play and fish at as kids. The black pond was what we called the pond 7 miles into the woods behind Michael's family farm. I had a love-hate relationship with that place. During the day it was fine, but as soon as the sun would set it became a different world, a horrifying one painted with deep blacks and grays. The water content in the clay and mud was so high that most of the trees around it appeared to be dead and barren. I loved fishing at it in the daytime, but hated getting stuck there at night. I could be sworn that I would hear whispers and see things behind trees there at night. Of course, it could very well been my imagination, as I was just a kid and easily spooked. Well, do you want to go? I glanced up at Michael before looking back down at my hands. No, not really. Also, where did that come from? We haven't been over there in at least a decade now. You forget something there. You feeling nostalgic? Are you sick? He paused and looked from side to side. Sick? What the fuck do you mean sick? Sick like dying. Did you find out you have cancer or something? Michael sat back and interlocked his fingers in his lap. In a way, yes. In all actuality, no. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Mikey, what the fuck does that mean? It means quit asking questions and let us take a ride out to the farm, I sighed. Which car are we taking? Let us take mine. It's bad enough I forced my way into your house. I could drive 20 minutes later. We got to the farm gate, and I, being the passenger, had to get out to both open and close it. You call ahead and let your mom know we were coming? Now you seem to be doing that a lot lately, I said while looking back at the gate through the window. He just scratched his neck and glanced at the rearview mirror. What is going on, Michael? What happened? This is extremely out of character for you. I never known you to be the nostalgic type. He looked uneasy, darting his eyes to any and all unoccupied spaces. I talked to somebody. They did me a favor. I had to go through hell to get it. The prize for my labor is out here. I stare at him. Mikey, do you know how vague and cryptic that shit sounds? That is almost no better than the explanation you gave me at the dinner table this morning. What person and what kind of favor? Michael smiled in an extremely unsettling way. You LLC, Brian. It's going to be amazing, literal decades in the making. This person is legit. I know they made good on their promise. It is the type of person there is mood shifted. They better have on that last statement. We both fell into a deep silence until we reached the turnoff on the old dirt road that lead to the Black Pond. We both climb out of his pickup and walk towards the bed where our fishing gear is laid. We both silently grab our tackle and poles and start for the pond. It is around 100 yards into the woods from the dirt road. We set up on the bank and prepare our lines before we both cast out. I can believe it, man. I am so exited. Now that we here, I can stop smiling. I glance at him from the side and notice him absolutely beaming. Well, where's the prize or favor or whatever that you were talking about? Michael, still beaming, says, Oh, I want to get my prize until midnight. I look at my phone. It's only 7:45. Damn, Michael. Couldn't this have waited? You got to go into work at 4. Michael's smile faltered as he turned to look at me. This is extremely important, Brian. I need you here. I need you right now more than anybody else. This is life and death we talking about here. You cannot abandon me. Not on this day, damn. Fine, let me go back to the truck and call in sick or something. You know, you reacting really fucking weird right now. I humor you because you really like my brother, but you need to chill out a bit. Ever since we turned in towards the farm you've been acting like a completely different person, and I am not vibing with it. Michael's face showed guilt. You rewrite, man. I am sorry. I shouldn't be acting like this. Not after showing up unexpected and strong-arming you into coming out here. I soften a little. Apology accepted. I turn ahead back to the truck and make my phone call. Hours pass as we sit and reminisce, telling stories of new encounters and experiences we hadn't shared yet. And in the midst of our conversation, I brought up Hannah, Michael's sister who passed over 10 years ago before I realized my mistake. Do you remember when we would try to get Hannah to do a full spin on the swing set? I immediately froze, realizing I overstepped a boundary. After Hannah passed, she was a sore topic for Michael. He loved her, almost not even like a sister, more akin to his child, to which she was in a way. Their parents were absent. The only adult around regularly was their pawpaw. He took care of the farm, the house, and what few animals were there. Their mom was a drunk, and their father was a womanizer who ended up getting shot after fooling around with the wife of a banker. Sadly, Pawpaw passed away not too long after Hannah did, from a broken heart, they say. Their mom, even more sadly, inherited the farm and let it run into the ground, leaving Michael with nothing. I do remember that. It was fun. To this day, none of us had ever made it all the way around the bars on a swing set. I was slightly shocked to find that mentioning Hannah didn't put him in a mood, especially with the way he has been acting. We both sat in silence for a while. You didn't have much of a reaction to Hannah. His name? Oh, yeah, no. She coming back. I freeze, stunned. The sun is starting to drop behind the trees with finger-like shadows beginning to cover Michael's face, leaving only glint in his eyes as he looks in my direction. Brother, what do you mean by that? Who is coming back? He slowly breaks into a smile, and while slightly giggling, he says, She is coming back, Brian. She is almost here. I told you I asked for a favor. My prize is almost here. I stare at him, growing extremely uneasy. Okay, buddy, this is starting to get a bit weird, but I sit through it with you, and I be here for you, O'Brien. I know that I need you for the exchange. I could get her back without you. I stand frozen until the words register, and upon realization, I turn and I bolt toward the truck. I can hear heavy footsteps advancing towards me. I make it to the driver's side door before finding the door locked. Michael caught up with me and smashed my head into the top of the door frame. I turned around and put up my elbow to fend him off. He kept grabbing me and lashing out like an animal. I hit him one good time up the side of the head, and it caused him to stagger back far enough for me to make a break for the dirt road leading to the farm. As I am running, I hear his truck start just before the sound of tires skidding and biting into the earth as he whipped the truck around to chase me. When I realized what was happening, I dove for the rickety fence to the right of the road. It is not super sturdy, but it is sturdy enough to fuck up his truck if he tried to ram through it to get to me. I kept running along the fence until it stopped. When it ended, I ran into the woods to the right, hoping I could remember how to get back to the farmhouse through the woods like I did when I was a kid. I heard Michael yell something intelligible before barreling down the road in his truck. After that, it was complete silence. I felt my way through the ever-darkening woods and attempted to follow the creek that I thought I knew from when I was a kid, losing all hope of finding my way out until I saw a glint of yellow light in the distance. I started towards it slowly at first, but when the shadow of the building widened and became familiar, I fell into a dead sprint. It was the farmhouse. I get to the fence surrounding the house and look around. No sign of Michael S. truck, no sign of a disturbance of any kind. No noise, nothing. Just a single light on in what I remember being the master bedroom. I'm not stupid. Even with no obvious sign of Michael, I was going to waltz in and put my feet up on a table, but I needed to go in. The nearest house is 2 hours away on foot, and I was already feeling like shit. With luck, Michael's mom wasn't on a bender, and the phone bill was paid. I needed to call the cops, tell them that my best friend has gone batshit insane, talking about sacrificing me to his dead sister or something. I slowly creep up to the house. Everything still looks clear and relatively undisturbed. I open the back door and stare down the long, dark hallway, filled with shadows of what I remember being Victorian style end tables and shelves. I walk on the edge of the floor closest to the wall in an attempt to stifle creaks in the old wood. It didn't work as great as I would hoped. Every creak sending a shock down my spine and causing my body to tense up ready for a fight. I enter the kitchen. The only light is the moon bleeding through the curtains. I find the phone next to the fridge. It is not glowing green. Picking it up and pressing the buttons confirms what I expected. It doesn't work. I slowly put the phone back onto the receiver and head to the stairs. This is going to be loud. I creak all the way up the stairs, wincing with every step until I come upon the bedroom door. I see the outline of Michael S. mom, sitting in front of the window, far back enough to not be visible from the outside, rocking in her chair. I slowly walk up behind her, whispering to her, asking if she can hear me. As I get close to standing over her, I notice her face is gone. What is left is black edges with dark red oxidized meat and white eyes looking, yet seeing nothing. I stumble back in shock before I get hit in the head. I still don't know what it was. It hit me so fast and hard it didn't hurt. It felt like waking up from a dream. No pain, just fuzz. Everything was slightly black tinted as I was drugged down the stairs, across the floor, the stepping stones, the yard, then the bed of the truck. The truck I hoped wasn't there. It felt like seconds between the house and the pond. Next thing I know, I am laying on the bank. Michael loomed over me, crouched like a wild animal and gazing at the edge of the water. I slowly started coming out of my blunt force trauma-induced haze. My first thought was that I needed to remain hazy. Dante, let him know I am awake and aware. Minutes pass and nothing. Michael kept checking his phone. Fog began to roll in, and what sounded like whispers grew louder and louder. It is time, Brian. Your brains might be scrambled, but as long as you alive, you do. I didn't want you to be involved in this to begin with, but I accidentally killed Mom. She was the one I was going to trade, but I couldn't help myself. That was years in the making. I never apologize for that. I never apologize for any of this. Not if it brings her back. There is nothing I want to do to bring her back. I loved you, Brian, but I always loved her more. She was all I really had or wanted. I trade you 1,000,000 times for my Hannah back. Any second now, I'll be beckoned to offer you up, and I'll make the trade with no hesitation. I continue my charade of sleep until I notice the voices getting louder. Michael then sits on the middle of my back and readies himself. I hear him gasp, and as I look ahead into the murky water where I see a black lump form, I feel him loosen and lean forward, shifting his balance to the front before a ghostly white face appears under the lump. I take the opportunity to lurch my lower half up and forward. Michael slips and headbutts the back of my head, sending a shock through my skull. I quickly rotate under his legs and throw him to the side. We re-comparable in size with him having maybe 5 or 6 pounds on me and maybe slightly more muscle, but he was caught off guard. I put my forearm over his throat before he grabs mine with both hands. I see wild desperation and anger in his eyes. I remove my forearm from his neck to grab his hands around mine. His grip is strong, but he is on the ground, so I twist and put my shin across his neck. I successfully choke him with my shin before turning over and attempting to crawl away. As I crawl, I feel a sharp pain in my right calf. I look back and see that Michael has buried a large pocket knife into my leg. As I look in horror, he pulls it back out and continues stabbing my leg. I roll over again, and before he can bury the knife into my shin, I kick his hand hard enough with my good leg to break or hurt something vital to his grip. I lunge for the knife, and so did he. We wrestled and grappled for it while cutting each other's hands. I finally took it from him before stabbing him in the head. It wasn't like the movies or games. It glanced off a bit, taking a large flap of skin with it, but not really penetrating the bone. Of course, I was also hesitating slightly. He was my friend. I grew up with this man. He screamed angrily before I continued my assault on his skull, each scream becoming weaker and more gurgling as the blood from his face, eyes, ears, cheeks, forehead began filling his mouth and covering his lips. All that was left afterwards was a carved bloody pulp with ragged shallow breathing. I wiped the blood off me and nearly began to cry before I noticed whatever creature he summoned was still staring just above the water. I locked eyes with the creature, and after what felt like an eternity, I grabbed the truck keys off Michael and slowly started backing away, limping and never breaking eye contact with the creature, it seemingly never moving. I went to the hospital, and while I was there, I asked for the police because I needed to report a crime. The nurse said the police were already on their way due to the nature of my wounds. After I was treated, I told the cops a remixed version of what happened. I told them about everything except what I saw in the water. They never believed that. Sometimes even I don't believe that. They went to the farm. They found Michael S. mom. But they never found Michael. I found him though, or rather, he found me. A month after what happened, I started hearing taps on my window at around midnight. At first I ignored it, but eventually I would get up and see. I see Michael standing there, grinning through peeled and shredded flaps of skin. I called the cops the first couple times, but after several fruitless searches and wary looks, I stopped. Besides, I don't think there's much they can do. I noticed that he never heals. And if I didn't know any better, I'd say he has been rotting over the past 3 years. He whispers to me, sometimes, should I hear him out? I miss him. That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.